The jewelry store was quiet that afternoon, just the soft hum of the display lights and the occasional chime of the door as customers walked in and out. Emily, a kind-hearted and soft-spoken woman, was just browsing. She wasn't flashy or loud, just a simple soul with a gentle smile, looking for a small gift to mark her wedding anniversary. What she didn't know was that her day was about to take a sharp and terrifying turn. Out of nowhere, a uniformed officer entered the store with a stern look and a clear mission. His eyes locked onto Emily, and within moments, he was accusing her of theft. The store clerk looked confused. Customers stood frozen, and Emily, she was speechless, her face pale with shock. The officer insisted he had reliable information, and despite Emily's pleas, he began to handcuff her right there in front of everyone. What the officer didn't realize was that someone else had entered the store just moments after him. A tall man in plain clothes, standing quietly in the back. He wasn't just any man. He was the city's police chief and Emily's husband. He watched the entire scene unfold, his eyes narrowing with each passing second. Something didn't sit right with him, not just the treatment of his wife, but the confidence with which the officer lied. Why would one of his own target an innocent woman? And more importantly, why her? As Emily was being led outside, still protesting her innocence, the chief finally stepped forward. The officer froze. That's when everything began to unravel. But the truth, it's deeper than anyone could have imagined, and someone's career and life might never be the same after what's about to be exposed. Chief Daniels stepped forward slowly, his expression unreadable. The officer, still gripping Emily's arm, turned to face him and instantly stiffened. "Chief," he said, voice shaky now, "this woman was caught stealing." Witnesses pointed her out. Emily looked between the two men, confusion and fear written all over her face. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "I didn't do anything." Daniels didn't respond right away. Instead, his eyes scanned the store, noting the security cameras, the stunned employees, and the uneasy silence. He knew his department well, too well, and this officer, Barnes, had a reputation for cutting corners, for pushing limits. But framing someone, and choosing his wife. No one in the store knew who Emily really was. She had always kept her identity low-key, never throwing around her husband's title. She liked living simply, keeping her life separate from the badge he wore, but that quiet life had just been shattered. Barnes started explaining, fast and rehearsed, something about a tip-off and suspicious behavior. Daniels listened carefully, but something wasn't adding up. Why would a decorated officer make such a bold move, without any real proof? And how could he miss the fact that the woman he was arresting was the chief's wife? Unless he didn't miss it at all. As Daniels stood there, pieces started clicking into place. A recent internal investigation, rumors of dirty dealings, and Barnes, who had everything to lose if the wrong people started digging. Emily, still cuffed, looked up at her husband, silently begging for answers. But Daniels couldn't show his hand. Not yet. Not until he knew who else was involved. Something bigger was happening here. And this moment at the jewelry store, it was just the beginning. Daniels calmly motioned for Officer Barnes to uncuff Emily. The hesitation was slight, but it was there, enough for Daniels to catch. Barnes finally released her wrists, mumbling something about needing to follow protocol. Emily rubbed her arms, shaken but still silent. She wasn't just embarrassed, she was rattled to the core. This wasn't just some misunderstanding. Someone wanted her in that position, and Daniels was starting to wonder, why? Back at the precinct, Daniels pulled up Barnes' record. On paper, everything seemed clean. Commendations, steady performance, no official complaints. But under the surface, rumors had been circling. Whispers of side dealings, missing evidence, and connections to a private security firm under investigation. Daniels had kept his eye on it all, but nothing ever stuck, until now. Meanwhile, Emily sat at home, her hands still shaking. Her mind kept replaying the scene, Barnes' smug tone, how quick he was to accuse, How confident he seemed. She remembered something else too. Just before he cuffed her, he said something strange. "You think you're better than the rest of us, huh?" It didn't make sense. Unless he knew who she was all along. Across town, a young clerk from the jewelry store was pacing nervously in his small apartment. He had seen everything, and he knew what Barnes had done wasn't right. But stepping forward meant putting a target on his back. He'd already gotten an anonymous text after leaving work. Keep quiet, for your own good. Daniels dug deeper. A pattern began to emerge. False accusations, rushed arrests, all tied to cases that quietly disappeared. And the same names kept popping up. Barnes was just one piece of something larger. And now, by going after Emily, they may have pushed the wrong man too far. Daniels stayed late at the precinct that night, the glow of his office computer casting shadows across the walls. Every file he pulled up on Barnes pointed to something just out of reach, like the truth was buried under carefully written reports and spotless records. But it was there, he could feel it, and after what happened to Emily, he wasn't letting it go. He called in a favor from a trusted old friend in internal affairs, someone who owed him more than one. Within hours, an unofficial folder landed on his desk, files never meant to see daylight. Suspicious patterns of evidence going missing, complaints that were mysteriously withdrawn, and worst of all, payments traced back to Barnes from a shell company linked to a private jewelry security firm. The same firm that had recently reported a string of thefts from their partner stores, including the one Emily had visited. It wasn't just a bad arrest, it was a setup, a scheme, and Emily had been used as bait. Meanwhile, Emily wasn't staying quiet. Something about the way Barnes had looked at her, it haunted her. She went back to the jewelry store the next day, hoping to jog her memory. That's when she saw the young clerk again. He looked nervous, like he hadn't slept. She approached gently, and after a moment of hesitation, he spoke. "He told me to say I saw you take it. I didn't, but he threatened to ruin me if I didn't play along." That was it, proof that this went deeper than anyone thought. Emily rushed home to tell Daniels, but before she could walk through the door, a dark car parked across the street suddenly drove off, tires screeching. Someone had been watching her, and now they knew she was talking. Emily stood frozen on the sidewalk, heart pounding as the taillights of the black car disappeared around the corner. She looked over her shoulder, unsure if she should go inside or run the other way. Every instinct screamed that something was off. Someone was watching her, maybe more than one person. And if they were bold enough to follow her in broad daylight, what else were they willing to do? Daniels was already on edge when she walked through the door, breathless and shaken. She told him everything: the store clerk's confession, the car, the feeling that someone was closing in. He tried to stay calm, but inside, something cracked. This wasn't just about corruption anymore. This was personal. Someone wasn't just trying to silence witnesses, they were sending a message. That same night, Daniels got an encrypted message through a back channel he hadn't used in years. It was short: check your department's internal fund transfers, last 6 months. Look at who signed off. He followed the trail, his fingers trembling as he opened the reports. His eyes widened. Barnes wasn't working alone. Someone high up, very high up, had signed off on quiet budget movements tied to the jewelry security contract. Someone inside the top brass. Daniels realized the corruption ran deeper than he'd feared. This wasn't about a single bad cop. It was a network. A cover-up stretching across offices, businesses, and backroom deals. And now they were tying up loose ends. That's when Daniel's phone buzzed again, this time a photo. It was blurry but clear enough. Emily, standing outside the jewelry store earlier that day. The message read, "You getting too close. Next time, we won't miss." Daniels knew then he couldn't trust anyone inside his own department, and time was running out. Daniels didn't sleep that night. While Emily rested under the watch of a trusted off-duty officer he called in quietly, Daniels was back at the precinct, digging through every document, call log, and budget entry he could find. The deeper he went, the clearer it became. Barnes was just a tool. The real mastermind was someone who had access to department funds, surveillance clearance, and the power to make people disappear from records. By morning, Daniels had what he needed. He called an emergency internal meeting under the guise of a standard budget review. High-ranking officers filled the room, some confused, others suspicious. Barnes showed up last, his usual smug look slightly cracked now. Daniels stood in front of them all and laid out everything. The fake theft accusations, the store clerk's testimony, the shady contracts, and the hidden payments. Then he dropped the biggest bomb, recordings from a wiretap placed just hours before on Barnes' personal phone. In it, Barnes was caught talking to Deputy Chief Harrington, confirming they had handled the woman and that the chief doesn't suspect a thing. The room went silent. Harrington stood up slowly, trying to deny it, but Daniels already had internal affairs officers waiting outside. They walked in at just the right moment, placing Harrington and Barnes under arrest. The look on Barnes' face, shock mixed with fear, was almost satisfying. Justice was finally catching up. Emily was cleared of all suspicion, and the department began a quiet but deep overhaul. But just when things seemed to settle, Daniels received one final file in an unmarked envelope on his desk. Inside was a photo of Emily again, this time much older. The date on the back was from 15 years ago, and the note attached read, *, you never really knew who she was, did you? *. Everything he thought he knew just shifted again. Daniels sat alone in his office, staring at the photo in his hands. The image of Emily, younger but unmistakable, standing in front of a government building overseas. The handwriting on the back didn't match anything official, but the message hit like a wave. He knew Emily as his wife, a kind woman who avoided the spotlight, who loved quiet mornings and warm coffee. But there was a past she'd never spoken of, and maybe, after everything, she had her own reasons. That night, he confronted her gently. Emily looked at the photo, then at him. For a moment, she said nothing. Then finally, with a quiet sigh, she told him the truth. Years ago, before they met, she'd worked in a quiet intelligence role overseas, low-level, off-record, and deeply buried. She'd walked away from it all, hoping to build a life far from secrets and danger. She never expected her past would brush so close to their present. But someone had remembered her. Maybe Barnes had been tipped off, or maybe it was all a coincidence. But her name, her face, had triggered something in the shadows. And once she was pulled into the spotlight, there was no escaping it. Daniels listened, not with anger, but with understanding. They had both lived lives tied to the badge, to systems built on trust that could be broken in an instant. But through it all, they had chosen each other. Barnes and Harrington were formally charged, and the department slowly rebuilt. The clerk from the store was cleared, promoted to assistant manager, and given a quiet thank you from Daniels himself. In the end, what began as a false arrest turned into the uncovering of a much deeper truth, and while the case was closed, Daniels and Emily knew, not every file gets sealed forever.